Okay, so we're going to draft the skirt, and the first thing we need to do is come up with the side seam. So the skirt length for the side seam is 22 inches. You can see here that I used a square ruler, so an L square, and then I used my clear ruler to make sure that it was 22 inches long. And then I marked A at the top and B at the bottom. Okay, then the second thing we're going to do is we're going to measure down on that line 7 inches from A. That becomes our hip depth. Now we're going to use the same hip depth for the front and the back no-ease skirt. So we're going to mark that at 7 inches. You can even take a note like I did on that line. And then you're going to measure the next mark, which is A to D. Now A to D is kind of your squared outline for the width of the skirt at the waist. So we're going to go out from A to D to the left at 9.5 inches. And again, I'm going to use that squared ruler. Now, I'm going to measure on that ruler and then mark at 9.5 D. The next step is to square out from C. Again, C is our hip depth. So we're going to square out on that 7-inch mark. We're going to square out the same amount, 9.5. And then at the hem, or the bottom, so we're essentially making a rectangle, we're going to also square out 9.5 inches. You might notice that I'm rotating the ruler, the L square, and that's because I like to make sure that I'm using the inches side. Now, it's okay if you rotate it, you just want to make sure that you're as accurate on your marks as possible. As you can see, I've measured out 9.5, and that becomes our B to F line. Now we have to connect all of those marks, so D to E to F with a straight line. Again, you could use your L square, you could also use your clear ruler, and just make sure that you're matching up the points in the grid as accurately as you can. So that will become our center back line. That's the center back of our skirt, which means it's the center line along the back of the body. Now we have to drop our mark from D to G. So D to G is 1/4 inch. E to G is 6 3/4, which makes sense because 6 3/4 plus 1/4 inch is 7, which is the amount that we created that rectangle. Now we have to create the front side of the skirt. So again, we're making a rectangle, and from A to H is going to be 9 inches. So we're going to use our squared ruler, square out 9 inches, and make a mark and call that H. You then can do the same thing at that hip line, or the hip depth. So we're going to square out from C, which is that hip mark, to I, 9 inches. It's very important that everything in this stays as square and straight as possible. Then at the hem on the front, again, we're going to square out a line at 9 inches, and we're going to call that the B to J line. Once we've completed all of those marks, H, I, and J, we're going to connect them using a ruler. This H, I, and J line becomes our center front, which again is the center of the skirt. Now we're going to draft the darts, and the darts are what gives the skirt shape, because if we just used it to make a skirt now, it would be a rectangle and it wouldn't be fitted. So now we're going to measure along the D to A line, and we're going to measure 8.5 inches and make a mark. Then we're going to measure along the D to A line and make a mark at 3 inches, which is the beginning of the back dart placement. As you can see, I'm going from D, I'm measuring over 3 inches, and I'm writing L. We're going to mark over from L 1 inch, and that'll be the width of our dart. We need to provide some space between the dart because again, we're doing a 2-dart skirt foundation. So what we need to do is measure over from that 1-inch dart, and we're going to make a space. And the dart space is going to be 1.25 inches. So again, we're going to measure over 1.25 inches, and we're going to make another dart, and that dart is going to be 1 inch. On the K mark, which we made earlier, we need to square up and down. And squaring is essentially making just a guideline, a nice straight guide that we're going to use later to make a more complicated shape. Now we need to work on, again, the front side. We're kind of toggling back and forth between the two. And from H, we're going to measure 8¼ inches and make a mark M. Now you'll notice that I'm looking back and forth at my laptop because I'm following along with the PowerPoint, and that's the easiest way to create this skirt draft. Then we're going to measure again over from H, and we're going to make a mark for N. We're going to measure over 3 inches and then make the letter N. Now we need to create our first dart, and our first dart is 5/8 of an inch from N. And this is where reading that ruler becomes very important. Just like we did on the back, we need to create some dart space between the first and second dart. So we're going to measure over 1.25 inches, and we're going to make our first mark. Then because we want our darts to be the exact same size, we're going to again measure 5 1/8 inch and make a mark. So now both of our dart openings are 5 1/8 on the front and 1 inch on the back. Just like we did with K, we need to square a line on M. So again, I'm going to that M mark, and I'm going to square a line up and down. And now I'm going to create and connect those points that I just made. I'm using a shallow hip curve. I'm measuring and making sure that I'm connecting C, P, and Q, the side hip depth, as 7¼ counting along my ruler, and I'm measuring to that 7¼ side from the C line, or also known as the hip depth. It's a little light here, but don't worry, I will go over it again later to show you how to darken and make the line more clear. What I did on the front, I now have to do to the back. So I'm going to connect C and P using my hip line. So I'm going to the C and I'm drawing that line. And again, I'm making sure that it's 7¼ So what we've done is we've created the side seam and curved the hip. And now we're going to curve the waist. Now we need to make sure that we're connecting P and G. Remember we dropped G a little bit below that guideline, the D guideline? So make sure that your ruler goes up to P and down to G. And you're going to get a curved line. And you can see that very clearly right here. I need to again do the same on the other side and connect H and Q to draw a waistline. And I'm going to use that shallow curve to help me. You can see the skirt really starting to take shape here. Now we need to finish our darts. So we're going to square down 5½ inches from the center of the back dart. How big was our back dart again? It was 1 inch. So half of that is 1/2 inch. So we're going to measure in between our dart, balancing it and making a mark and making a squared line that's 5½ inches long. We're going to do this to both of our darts because remember we want them to be the same length and the same width. Now I also like to add a little guideline on this. So I measure horizontally and I draw a straight line just to make sure that they're nice and straight. Then you just connect the end of the darts to that guideline that you just drew. You're making a triangle. Darts are essentially triangles, and they're helping to give us shape for our skirt. You can see that I'm drawing the darts, connecting the dart points to the dart tip, and creating those triangles. Now we have to do the front. So we're going to square down 3.5 inches from the center of the front dart intakes. Now, how big was our front dart? This is going to get a little bit confusing, but it'll make sense in a second. We had 5 1/8 inch wide dart, which means we have 5 1/16 on either side in the center, from the center. So we're going to measure the center of 5/8, which is 5/16, and measure down and draw a square 3.5 inch line. Then we're going to draw a guideline again, connecting those lines, and then finish drawing the dart legs to draw our triangle darts. I'm going to darken these up so you can see them better, because I'm sure right now you can barely see the side seam. So again, I'm tracing my darts. And I'm going to trace that waistline again to make it nice and dark for you. I'm going to draw the hip line, and you'll notice that they match on both sides because we want them to match on the front and the back skirt. Something else you notice is the darts are different widths and lengths on the front and the back. Again, I'm tracing that waistline using my curved ruler to help me. It's better to try to match up your rulers and not freehand. Now I'm drawing the hip curve, just darkening that guideline that I drew on both the front and on the back. It really is starting to look like a pencil skirt now. I'm drawing and tracing the center line of that dart with a dotted line, just so you can see it. I'm also marking the center front on the front skirt, as well as the center back. Labeling is extremely important. So we're going to tell you the same steps for marking and labeling both. You're going to write what it is. It's a skirt back, no ease, and you're going to write the year. Make sure you also write your name. On the E to I line, you're going to write hip line. This is very important. The hip line is an important marking. Also, on the A to B line, you're going to write side seam, and that's the side seam of our skirt. Now we've marked the back, and we also need to mark the front. So again, you're going to write your name, the piece that it is, so skirt front, no ease, the year, and no seam allowance. Also write the size. This is a size 10 foundation skirt. We need to add a grain line, and the grain line is going to help us when we construct everything because it's going to make sure that the grain of our fabric is going the right way. I like to match it along the center front and center back line. You're going to draw a straight line using your ruler, and you're going to draw 2 triangles at the base and the top of the straight line. You really want a long grain line because it'll help you later on. Congratulations, you've successfully drafted the skirt back, no ease, and skirt front, no ease foundation.